Greetings, this is Chris with World Changers Church Norcross, and today we are looking at our video production setup here. And as you can see, we're going to go through the ins and outs on how everything is set up, the source connections. We're going to get into some detail on our main video switcher, which is the Roland V40HD. We have a couple cameras set up. We have a Canon, get that out the light here, a Canon HD running an HDMI cable. We also have a video camera here, which is also running HDMI, and we have some sources here on the bottom. So we're going to go through everything in quite a bit of detail. We're going to look at some detail in our V40HD, which is a good recommendation for pretty much all of our locations, especially as we're progressing and we're adding on more connections and doing bigger things. You definitely want to keep your eyes out on this. I know this is kind of small, it's a bit compact, but for most of our locations it's very good in size. But don't be deceived by the size. It does a lot of goodness. So we're going to look into that, and we're also going to look into how everything is connected. As you can see, here's a few more devices in our rack. We have some transmitters, we do have some overflow rooms, a couple of other rooms that get in the feed, like we have a kids room, and we have another private room, and also our green room. We have some transmitters here, and we have we're using this Pathfinder as some video routing. So let's get into it. So the cool thing about this video mixer here, it takes 12 inputs. However, it only takes it's only 4 simultaneous active inputs. I have 4 channels here. It takes 12 inputs, but only 4 active at the same time. It does take HDMI, as we can see here. It takes HDMI. It also takes VGA, or this may say RGB/component, and it also takes composite. So if you have older technology such as a camcorder or an older DVD player, which gives you the RCA outputs, you can use those connections for this particular mixer. It does give you a preview out, and as you can see, I have a preview monitor set up here, and I have some inputs already set up. I have channel 1, I have the iMac. As you can see, I have a stream running here. This is running the Boxcast. I have an iMac computer down below. As you can see there on the front row, that's in full screen, and those are the Boxcast controls. I have a second input, which is one of the cameras here, which is the video, which is to my right. And channel 3, I have the Canon camera, which is on channel 3 running HDMI. And then I have another laptop, which is running ProPresenter. And as you can see, I have a lower thirds template that I'm kind of practicing on to see how that comes out. And I have another MacBook there on the bottom, as you can see to the right, that is specifically and only for ProPresenter in all of our media files. And the cool thing about this mixer, I have yet another laptop, another MacBook, and this is running our backup stream. Okay, this is also connected. So as we look back at the mixer, I can get all 4 simultaneous previews, the 4 active sources all at one time. Okay, one note, you must use an HDMI cable for the output to the monitor. You have to use HDMI for the initial setup. It is only an HDMI cable, but for the initial setup you must have a monitor that can read an HDMI signal in order to see the preview menus. Without that, you're pretty much in no man's land. You won't be able to do much. There's a lot of settings in the menu, and what I mean is, hit the menu button here, there's a lot of menu options for inputs, outputs, transitions, and systems, and it's got all kind of goodies. So you need the preview monitor to see this. It only shows up on the preview monitor. Okay, and plus you'll notice it needs, let me hit the menu, it needs that HDMI connection to display this type of view. So it's got more than one view, but we typically use this view so we can see all active sources at one time. Now also notice, yes, it does have 12 inputs, 4 active. So one thing we'll look into first, you must select the desired input. So let's say channel 2, I actually have 2 different inputs at once. So channel 2, if I select 2, and notice I have HDMI selected, that will give you my camera feed. which HDMI 2 over here in the top right, you see channel 2 HDMI. But I can also connect a VGA cable to channel 2. So if I select 2 and then come up here and hit RGB component, it will switch over to my backup laptop. And as you can see, I'm getting prepared for the Boxcast service on backup 2. And as you can see, I've already started that. So I can switch back and forth. So whatever source I'm not using while I'm in show, I can go back to that specific source. So like during praise and worship, we're using multiple cameras, or we're using 2 cameras. So I typically run that, and then as we're done wrapping up with praise and worship and we get ready for the backup service, or when the backup's needed, I just switch back for that particular channel. So there's 2 buses on here. You have a preview bus, which you can select each source and preview it, and as I'm selecting it, notice how it turns green, and notice how it shows you that you have an active input status. It should light green. If you don't have a cable connected or something's not correct, it will go blank. But if something is active, it will turn green. So as you preview 1 through 4, you can actually see that on my monitor. You can see that there's a green light, that there's a green square that goes around each monitor as I select each one. That just lets you know that yes, this is in preview and this is what's ready to go to projector or to your main screen or program when you go through your transitions. Now at the top you do have bus A, which is program. This is what is seen currently on the projector, and to my left I have to my right I have a preview monitor, but to my left I have another monitor that demonstrates what's seen on program. So this would be useful if you have a control room, or if you're somewhere else not in the sanctuary and you can't see. This gives you, okay, this is what the congregation or your audience is seeing. So what's lit red here, as you can see, the red square is what's on program, and as you can see, that matches over here. Okay, so you have these 2 channels. You can actually use these independent of each other as well. There's actually a different type of mode. So I can connect A to one set of projectors, and I can connect B to another set of projectors, and instead of this becoming a preview, I can actually use this as split monitoring or split view, so my congregation can see 2 different things at one time. So right now I have it in just single out mode, so whatever you see on A is going to come out, and then B will be my preview. This is the default, and this is how we prefer to use it. We typically don't have to use multiple screens, but if you wanted to, we could. We have 2 separate buses, 2 different modes. Okay, so you have 2 different buses, and you do have those 3 type of inputs. Now you do also have 3 types of outputs, and you can change your format. Right now we are currently running RGB, which is also the VGA selection, just standard definition VGA cable out. And in order to see everything on your screen correctly, you must know that yes, you can use the option of RGB or VGA. You can use HDMI, high definition, if you're running like 16:9 or a high resolution. There is an HD option, and there's also standard definition, which is composite out, which we don't run. But if you have to use a composite out, you can do so. Now you can only use one at a time. It is not a simultaneous output. You can't run all 3 at the same time. Do note that if you do run HD out, make sure that whatever you're running to is compliant, HD compliant, or you will you run into a loss of signal. It won't display correctly if you're not HDMI or high copyright protected, digital copyright protection for HD. So just note that. Okay, so we're coming out of here RGB, and once we come out with this red cable on the output, it actually runs into what we call a DA, and this goes into one input here. We're using a CDA4 as just one input. It comes out 4, so it duplicates the signal 4 times, and it goes to it goes to 3 different projectors, and then it comes out, and then it goes up into our Pathfinder, and we can do some additional routing. We use a lot of outputs here. Okay, so those are the outputs. Now with the preview monitor, again, you must have an HDMI monitor for the initial setup. But once you get set up, man, it's pretty cool. You have 4 different modes for your preview monitor. You have your input, which is what I like, which you get the 4 different inputs at simultaneous times. Now do note that you may see it stutter a little bit, like the frame rate does drop when you have 4 simultaneous sources. It drops the frame so it can collect all the data at once. But if you go to the next type, which is PST, which will preview the bottom bus or the B bus. So PST, if you hit this button here, it will make everything big and you get your normal format back. So I can preview my iMac, I can preview camera number 1 or 2, whatever you want to call it. I can preview my other camera, and I can preview what I have going on a ProPresenter. Okay, so that's PST. You have also the option to preview programs. So if you don't have multiple monitors, only have one, you want to see what's going on screen right now, you can see it in full screen. If you want to see some detail, there's what's going on program. And you also have the Dsk Preview, which will show you the effects of your downstream key. So if you look at like round out now, if I hit the Dsk, it will show you what my lower thirds is looking like before I send it to the main screen. See that? So I can preview it before. So if I were to put up that banner, that's my lower thirds banner over the main output. And we'll look into this in a minute because it does do the Dsk, so you can layer your logos or whatever you have, transparent logos, over your background images. So that's what that preview does. So you can see how it looks to make sure your keying is correct, make sure you're not pulling out too many colors or the wrong colors before you throw it on screen, because that could be a semi-disaster. This won't look right. So you can preview that before you send it to the screen. So I'm going to go back to input, and you'll get your 4 monitors back, simultaneous preview. So you're always keeping an eye on all the sources. Also, it does have some transitions here. It does have the wipe effect. You can do it manually with this T-bar, or you can do it with the auto button. So if you want to do a transition from one source to the next, you typically want to, so one is active on screen, it's red. So if I want to do a different transition, let's say I want to go to camera number 2 or source number 2, I can preview number 2. As you can see, it lights green or highlights green, and I can either raise the T-bar up, or another way to do it is I can hit auto, and if I hit auto, it will auto mix, and the transition time will take 4 seconds. Auto will always take 4 seconds if you leave it on 4 seconds. Here's a knob here that will change the time and duration of how long you want it to take. So if I want it to take less, I can dial to the left. If I want it more than 4 seconds, and if I want a nice slow transition, I can do 5 seconds. So if I hit auto, and let's see what happens here. I should be going to camera. There's that nice crossfade. That's the mix output. So if I hit auto again, we're transitioning now to the, when it's too slow, man, it's almost like going into a dream or something. But that's the auto button. I don't want 5 seconds, it's a little bit too slow, so you can do like maybe 2 seconds, so it's a little bit faster. You may want it that slow depending on the effect you're going for. Let's do all the way 2. And if I hit auto again, set to mix, it's just gonna go a little bit faster. See, a lot faster. Hey, you want to join our service live at the Dome? And let's go. So it's pretty straightforward. Or you can use the T-bar. This is considered the T-bar. You can do your own manual transition at your own pace. So I can just go up or down. I can go fast. I can go slow, and that's totally up to you. I can leave it in the middle if I want to. You know, whatever your taste is for. So yes, it does have these different wipe patterns. You also have a wipe to the right. So if I want to cut right, or not cut but wipe right, it will, you know, wipes to the right. I can go down, select 2. I'm just going to cross or transition with the T-bar, and there it is, down. So you got these different transitions, and I'm just bouncing between 2 sources. Then you also have a cut. I typically use cut, you know, if I'm bouncing between cameras, if I have active speaker and you don't necessarily want to do a crossfade, you know, that's a cut. So let's preview number 3 for the other camera. and I could just cut. So if I have multiple views of cameras going on, I just cut between camera shots. So that's a cut. Another thing is too, you don't necessarily have to preview or hit the auto. You can also do a direct cut between just hitting these red buttons. So if I go from 2 to 3 back and forth, it's the same thing. You can also cut it. Now it does have downstream keying, so I can select a logo, which is what I have on number 4. By default, channel 4 is what does the keying source, and by default it also keys out the color black, hence why I have a black background, and it will take out everything that's black and leave everything that's not black. Okay, so in order to do that, it's pretty straightforward. You just have to, on the right side here, there's a DSK and there's your key level, and all you have to do is hit the auto button. So if I hit the auto button, now mind you, if I hit the auto button, that transition is also going to take 2 seconds. This applies to the keying and the auto transition, and to the picture in picture. We're also going to look in the picture in picture as well. So it's going to take 2 seconds. So if I hit auto over here, and if I hit auto, there's our lower thirds. So it takes out that black, and it will leave that lower third there. You can put that over any background you want. So 4, remember, is default. And you can tweak the key level. Again, you want to preview this before you do it and make sure your levels, because if you tweak it too much, as you can see, I'm taking out all kind of colors. I'm pretty much, so I need all my information as much as possible. So you can tweak it first. So you don't want to have that key incorrect and then throw it on the screen. So yes, it does do it. And just don't forget to turn the auto off, because if somebody does something different on ProPresenter and you still have the auto on and it's doing something else, it's gonna key that out. So you have to be in communication with that. Now it does do picture in picture, and in order for you to do picture in picture, there's a couple things. One, it's still, you have to highlight how do you want to, you have to think to yourself, how do you want to set it up? The box itself, if you want the background that you want, let's say 2 is right now in background here. Okay, the picture in picture box is going to happen on the green, on the B bus. It's going to create a box in front of the background. So let's go to 4. I'm going to put that same banner on the bottom right. Okay, and I'm going to transition, and it's going to put that, there it is. So now that lower thirds is in a box. And yes, it does have the scaling options to make that bigger or smaller. So I can hit control a couple times, go to picture in picture, and then I can use this dial to change the size, and I can even move the position if I want to tweak it. So if I hit this dial here on size, I can go left or right. See, I can make that smaller, or I can make it bigger. I can also move left and right to change the position. If I want to make it little small minor tweaks, change the size back down, and there's your picture in picture. So when you're done, you just do the same transition again, hit the T-bar, and that takes it right off. And we typically do the picture in picture when we do the 60-second meet and greet. We kind of put that clock there in the bottom right, and you'll see that on the screen, so you can see the camera, get the good view of the congregation, and then we throw the picture in picture of the 60-second countdown in that window there. And just don't forget, when you're done, you must reselect or deselect that again. So when the next time when you do a transition, you don't get picture in picture. You're actually going to do we'll go back to the mix. Okay, and we'll go back to control. You can also have some other scaling options, so you can scale your inputs. You can also even scale your outputs. So if you don't quite have the, you can do minor tweaks to any adjustments to make sure everything aligns correctly. So that's pretty cool. And it does take audio. So if you want to synchronize audio, you can embed audio to your HDMI output. It does it takes 1/4 inch, I think it takes 1/4 inch ends. Yes, it does. It takes 1/4 inch ends, and it will embed it on HDMI. All right, so once you're done with everything, once you get everything tweaked and set up, you must, and this is very important, I had to find out the hard way, because you know, sometimes people like me do not like to read manuals until you have to troubleshoot. You must save. This has a memory store here, so I can store defaulted, you know, you can store different banks, and you can do save on one, and you can also save your scaling. So if you want to do, let's say you only have one camera, so let's say I'll go back to camera 2. You know, I can go to camera 2, control my input, and I can change the size of that input too. Here's my, as you can see, my podium's getting closer and closer. So that's actually the scale happening. That's not the camera itself. I can leave my camera at one position, and I can do a zoom in on one store, and then store another memory on a camera zoomed out, and then save that, and I get, you know, I can get multiple shots that way. So you can, that's another cool tool that you can do. So I can do, you know, one camera shot, but I can save 2 different camera positions. Okay, so that's pretty much the V40HD. Mind you, this is not a brand new switcher. This has been on the market for, you know, some years now. I think this runs about 2,000, just under 3,000 bucks right now. But that's just the tip of the iceberg of what you can do. You know, the connections, the ins and the outs, you know, the cool transition effects. So, you know, when it's time to join our service live at the World Dome, we have a nice cool transition. And then again, we want to throw an announcement up over the dome. You know, there's our lower thirds. So you have all those goodies there. So that's the V40HD. So this is our video production setup. I hope you find it useful, man. Just keep watching it. Stay tuned for more. We'll add some more different setup guides and things that you can look at to help, you know, progress and making moves for the kingdom.